Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Africa is declared free of wild polio, a landmark moment that comes after Nigeria goes 4 years without any cases of the virus. Its eradication comes after a decades-long campaign that has sometimes cost vaccinators their lives. Also, ex-Ivorian leader Laurent Gbagbo's final hope of running in upcoming presidential elections are dashed after a court rejects his appeal against being struck off the electoral list. And close, but not too close, Tunisia encourages visitors to learn more about the endangered sea turtles breeding on its beaches in a bid to boost tourism and environmental awareness. Like the animal's habitat, it's a delicate balance. But first, after a mammoth 3-decade drive, Africa is finally free of wild polio. The paralysing and contagious virus destroyed lives around the world until a vaccine was found in the 1950s. But the difficulty in getting it to poorer communities in developing countries meant that their battle to eradicate the illness has taken longer. While Nigeria was Africa's last frontier in the campaign to wipe out polio, the last case there was detected in 2016, a 4-year threshold that had health workers, the WHO, and African governments celebrating on Tuesday. The hope now is that the continent can leave the devastation caused by wild polio behind it.
Vimy Sola, who lives in Lagos, contracted polio when she was only 11 months old. It's a viral disease that attacks the nervous system and can cause irreversible paralysis within hours. When Vimy Sola was young, she tried to hide the fact she had difficulties walking.
I was wearing very big clothes. I was trying to be a tomboy at the same time, trying to, mask up all my emotions that, whatever you say doesn't get to me and all that stuff. But at some point, you can only just hide from the whole world. But inside, in my corners, I would cry.
Nowadays, she is far more confident. She's a model, a wheelchair basketball player, and a para-swimmer.
Polio is not a death sentence. I'm here, I'm standing, I'm here, sitting. So polio is not a death sentence.
Children under 5 are the most vulnerable. The Association of Polio Survivors stressed the importance of vaccines.
I will appeal to them to continue cooperating with the government, to continue cooperating with the international partners, to continue with the vaccination. Is the only protective measure. It is only way that we are sure Nigeria will no longer have child with polio in our country.
In 1988, polio was endemic in 125 countries and paralysed nearly 1,000 children a day worldwide. Since then, thanks to a collective global effort, there has been a 99% reduction in cases. This year, wild polio has only been recorded in 2 countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Well, the WHO was one of the organisations leading that pushback against polio. Earlier, I spoke to Dr Richard Mihigo, the head of the WHO's Immunization and Vaccine Development Office in Africa. And I asked him what happens now that all the procedures that got the continent to this point.
Looking forward, we are looking on how we can preserve the gains that is achieved so far by strengthening routine immunization, by making sure that children who are born today are protected against this virus, and making sure that no one is left behind.
So it's all about making sure the vaccine, was disseminated as widely as possible. What was it, though, about northern Nigeria that made it so hard to shift those final outbreaks of polio and get the communities that needed it to be vaccinated?
Well, it was a combination of different factors. As you know, the northern of Nigeria was affected for a long time by insecurity with the Boko Haram insurgency in some part of the northern states. So many children were trapped in those insecure areas. So it was quite literally impossible to reach them. But today, I believe that if we are celebrating this milestone, it's also part because of the health workers who are the real heroes of this battle, where despite all the insecurity, the difficult terrain, were able to reach all the children in those very insecure areas. So I think that's we need, and we owe this moment and this victory to all of these thousands, if not millions, of health workers on the ground.
Now, while polio has been eradicated in Africa, but there are still some cases of vaccine-derived polio on the continent. How much of a concern is that?
Well, it's a real concern. We do have 16 countries that are reporting a few cases of vaccine-derived polio. As we know, these are things that happen when the population immunity is not enough. Before COVID-19 pandemic, we were planning to conduct massive vaccination campaign to address these remaining issues. Those were interrupted due to COVID-19 pandemic. But we are starting to work with country to resume those vaccination drive. And we hope that before the end of the year, we'll be able to mount a campaign that will protect children and probably once for all stop the vaccine-derived polio in those remote areas.
Well, in Ivory Coast, ex-leader Laurent Gbagbo's final hopes of running in October's presidential elections have been squashed. On Tuesday, an Abidjan court confirmed that Gbagbo will remain struck off from the country's electoral list. Sam Bradpiece tells us more.
Laurent Gbagbo, Charles Blé Goudier and Guillaume Soro, three very important men in Ivorian politics. All three of them also sentenced to 20 years in prison, which could have big political ramifications in the country. Ex-President Laurent Gbagbo for having stolen from the Central Bank of West African states. His former youth minister, Charles Blé Goudier, for crimes committed during the 2010-2011 post-electoral crisis. And Guillaume Soro, an ex-rebel leader, for the embezzlement of public funds. Now, as a result of their convictions, all three men have been removed from the country's electoral list. This means they've been stripped effectively of their civic rights, the right to vote, and more importantly in this context, the right to stand in an election. On Tuesday, a court here in Abidjan ruled against Laurent Gbagbo, who had appealed his stripping from the electoral list. Guillaume Soro's lawyers have also said that they're not happy with the decision to strip Soro from the electoral list, and so they've also made an appeal. He's yet to hear back from the court. Now, Soro, Gbagbo and Goudier are all very popular figures among certain sections of the electorate here in Côte d'Ivoire, but with today's ruling against Gbagbo, it looks decreasingly likely, I should say, that any of them will play an active role in the upcoming presidential election.
Sam Bradpiece there for us. Well, Khartoum's urged the US not to link the possibility of removing Sudan from Washington's state sponsors of terrorism list with Israel's hopes of normalizing relations with the African nation. The appeal came as US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made a whistle-stop trip to Sudan on Tuesday. Now, he's the first top US diplomat to do so since 2005. Pompeo flew in from Tel Aviv, and his office had said that his talks with Sudan's leadership on Tuesday reflect US support of Khartoum and Israel mending fences. Now, the two countries have technically been at war for decades. Sudan's new government is, meanwhile, hoping to be removed from the US's terrorism blacklist. Pompeo flew onto Bahrain later that day. Well, fires torn through one of South Africa's oldest mosques. A blaze broke out at the 139-year-old Grey Street Mosque in Durban and damaged several other nearby buildings in the city's business district. It took firefighters about 2 hours to bring the flames under control. It's not clear what caused the fire, but local Muslim organisations have said that it may have started by an electrical fault in one of the staff flats above the landmark site. Well, Tunisia is hoping that it can overhaul tourism in some of its more fragile ecosystems by encouraging visitors to tread carefully through the environment and around the wildlife that draws them. One project in the Kuriat Islands off the coast of Monastir is trying to highlight the vulnerability of turtle hatch sites. Our team reports.
In order to see them, one must be patient. Finally, the first baby turtles stick their noses out into night. The endangered reptiles are amongst the species followed by conservation group Notre Grand Bleu. It's working with the Coastal Protection Agency to maintain the biodiversity of the Kuriat Islands.
دونك نقوموا بحماية العش دونك كما تشوفوا توا لهنا دونك il faut orienter directement vers la mer دونك pour éviter معناتها الصغار اللي يمشيو يرجعوا directement معناتها الفيجيتاسيون et tout ça.
Vegetation isn't their only obstacle.
ساعات يجوا العباد لما يراو السلحفاة يفكروا الصغير يقول لك يا هذه ما أحلاها من يحب يهزا يروح بالدار alors qu'il est espèce protégée.
These sea turtles are caretta or loggerheads. Between pollution in the Mediterranean and abandoned fishing nests, only 1 out of 1,000 survived long enough to reproduce. By morning, some hatchlings still have not emerged. Conservationists opened up the nests to help the vulnerable babies make it to the water in time. Earlier this year, lobbying by Notre Grand Bleu helped bring about a ban on intensive hunting of sea turtles.
أول قانون لامركزي في الجمهورية التونسية اللي يعطي خطية مالية قدرها 1000 دينار لكل من يتم ضبطه في نقل أو حجز أو بيع.
Tourists who get a day pass to visit the islands are encouraged to attend a presentation about the turtles.
Combien d'espèces de tortues marines? C'était quoi la question? Marine.
This visiting French-Tunisian couple say they're very excited to experience the island's natural beauty while also learning about the environment.
L'écotourisme, en fait, c'est quelque chose qui est très important, je pense, puisqu'en fait, simplement, on va souvent aller vers le tourisme de masse, alors que c'est quelque chose qui ne va pas nous faire découvrir le pays. Je ne savais pas qu'il y avait justement toutes ces explications, cette sensibilisation, en fait, à l'habitat naturel des tortues.
Around 39 nests are spread across the island. Protecting the nesting sites is becoming increasingly urgent as climate change has been globally reducing the number of beaches suitable for sea turtles to lay their eggs.
Oh, they're adorable. That is, though, all we have time for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.